Hello. I just finished this big ass book, The Magic Mountain by Thomas Mann, with I believe exactly 1,000 pages, 1,002 pages, and I have a lot of unread books, and I feel like reading a lot of thin books after this big chunker, so let me show you my stack of unread books, or physical TBR, as the cool people call it. This is a lot, but that's still not all of them. There's more. Look at this. And that's still not all of them. Wait. This is like what some people would call immediate TBR, I guess. Like books that I wanna, just like an inspiration on what to read next. And then I have my Murakami collection. I have almost all of his books except for Underground and the newest one. So if I counted correctly, I have more than 140 books that I have not read yet. And I put a book buying ban on myself. I don't want to buy any more new books until I'm below 100. So we have a lot of reading to do, and next week I have a couple of days off, and I thought, why not see how many thin books I can read in a week. I think a thin book I would consider something with maybe like 150 pages or less. We have a lot of stuff here that fulfills that criteria. I have some things that I definitely want to read. I already picked the ones that I'm going to start with. I'm going to read The Pigeon by Patrick Süskind first. That's a play, and you know, plays are supposed to be consumed in one sitting, so that makes it easy. Then I have Endgame by Samuel Beckett. I love Samuel Beckett. And this version has the French original and then English and then also German. And if in total, if you just count like this, it's gonna take me like 45 minutes to read. It's really short. Then I definitely want to read Giovanni's Room. I don't know. I'm really excited to read this. And then we have some maybes, you know, like some I haven't read Garcia Marquez in a hot minute. Then we have The Stranger by Camus. That's like, I don't know. I'm definitely gonna brag about that book when I read it. And yeah, we just have a lot of stuff here, and I'll just see what comes to me. I don't want to be too determined. Definitely want to read one Hesse, at least. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I don't know if I expressed myself in a comprehensible way in that last clip, because I filmed it at like 7 in the morning. The challenge is, it's just to read as many short books as I can in a week, and I'm trying to read at least 10, I would say. That's a reasonable goal. And don't be fooled by my change of sweater. It is indeed the same day, and I already finished the first book. Die Taube, The Pigeon by Patrick Süskind. This is a masterpiece. I just have to put it like that. First of all, it's not a play. It's a novella. I thought it was. Look at this. The letters are quite big, so it took me like a bit less than 2 hours, I would say. Has exactly 100 pages. And this, it really, to be honest, this kind of blew my mind. Already after 20 pages, I couldn't really stop reading it. It's amazing. This guy, he's a master. Like, I can just say it like that. Where's my other one? The Perfume, that is like his magnum opus, and that's the only novel he ever wrote. Patrick Süskind. He's I was told that his other stuff is way different from this, and for this, the double bass, a play that I read earlier this year, I can definitely tell this is a play for one person, so it's just a monologue basically. And this already was really interesting, but this, oh my god, I think I like it almost as much as The Perfume, which is, it's in my top 5 definitely. This is just about a very anxious guy who is kind of like autistic coded. And he sees a pigeon in front of his door and it completely derails his whole life. And the amount of tension he builds in such a short time, like until the last page. Let me show you. Like, this is the amount of time that he needs to make you like hold your breath and be excited of what happens next. Really, this is this was a 5-star read. I can just say it like that. I love comparing books, so this came to mind. The Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This is very similar in a way that the character works. Like, this guy, he's just like a security guy at a bank. And he just does this, and he's, you know, he doesn't really have ambitions to do anything else, and then he questions everything. This is something that made me think of a comparison. And also, in a way, this is very Kafkaesque. Like, it reminds me of the Metamorphosis, which I don't, for some reason I don't have this book. I have a Franz Kafka tattoo, like I'm a super fan, but for some reason I don't own Metamorphosis. But, you know, like this guy, he's just anxious about his job, and then he rips his work pants and he feels like he's wounded, and definitely this guy must have read a lot of Kafka before he wrote this book, I would assume. So yeah, this is a big recommendation. And the next one I'm gonna read is Endgame. It's missing the cover, but I'm pretty sure I can also finish this today because this is even shorter than the other one. So yeah, that's the update. So it's later in the day. I finished Endgame and I'm having some mixed feelings. You know, first of all, this is very unique. You know, we have the French translation and the German one and then the English one here. And I think, I'm not sure, it has some endnotes, and I think maybe the German translation was made before the English one. I'm not sure if I understood that correctly. Anyway, this dude, Elmar Tophoven, he made the German translation, and then Samuel Beckett himself made the English one, and I found it very distracting to read, even though it's a very cool concept. In theory, it was very hard because I read the English one, because I didn't want to read the German one, because I felt this one is closer to the original, and I'm a sucker for originals. That's why I read in English so much also. And yeah, it was quite hard to follow sometimes. I covered parts of this halfway through. But yeah, and the German translation, I kept getting distracted by it, and it took a lot of liberties, and it actually had something in the endnotes about this, because he uses a lot of wordplays that don't translate in another language from French, you know, so they had to really change parts of it quite a bit. And it makes sense, but I still didn't really like that, you know. And also, this doesn't seem to be very well revised. Even though it's from Suhrkamp, that's like a very big German publishing house, but it has a ton of typos. So while I did not like this edition, the play itself was quite interesting. I will actually watch it again on YouTube. There are some versions that you can watch to really get a better grasp at it. Obviously, that's the big one, Waiting for Godot. That was in my top No, I made a top 6 because I couldn't decide on the top 5. That was in my top 6 last year. This has quite similar motifs. First of all, there are 2 main characters, and one character that just says like one long paragraph and then never does anything again, which is kind of funny. And yeah, they have like this weird power dynamic. They're called Cloth and Ham. And they have like, it's the same as Vladimir and Estragon and Waiting for Godot, in the way that Cloth is kind of a caretaker of Ham, because he has some disabilities, like he's blind and he cannot walk. Cloth takes care of him and he threatens to leave him. The same, I mean, in Waiting for Godot, Vladimir is kind of in the caretaker role, and Estragon is the one threatening to leave, and then they never leave. And while this is just about nothing happening, and this is about the end, like they're just waiting for the end to happen and everything stops existing, and they're in this limbo state. Like, this is something that I feel like is very on brand for Samuel Beckett, that he's not really creating like a piece of reality. Like the play itself is the only reality. I feel like that's something that's way easier to understand if you read some of his stuff, but like he's portraying the stage and the play as the only reality, and they're like weirdly aware of it, and nothing outside this. There's only one act and one scene basically in this whole play. It's like the characters only exist in this state, and there's no time. Like, Ham asks Cloth what time it is, and he says it's 0, there's no time. And it's very similar to what also happens here, where they're just in like a dreamlike, non-existent state. That got a little bit philosophical. Anyway, I'll give this 3 stars for this edition at least. I think I could easily give it 4 stars if I would have a better grasp at it. So I will watch the play and I'll show you what I'll read next. This one, it's on my other TBR shelf. It's called After Buffaloing by Jan Zalm. And I actually know this author. He was here in the village where I live. There's like some volunteering going on, and he was volunteering. He's from South Africa, and he used to teach English in the Middle East, I think in Saudi Arabia, and possibly some other countries. And he wrote a book. He wrote a book about it, and it's he's, first of all, in that whole time that I became friends with him, he never ever mentioned that he even wrote a book. I only found that out later. Very humble guy. I believe he did the illustrations himself, if I'm not mistaken. And we mainly have like anecdotes and dialogues and like funny things that happened. So this should be quite a short read. And actually he'll be coming back to this place here in the summer. And I would like to be done with that book until then. So this is my next read, but I won't finish it today. Hello. I fooled you again. This time it's the same sweater but a different day. The next, in fact. And I finished After Buffaloing by Jan Zalm. And this was really interesting, actually. Very unusual format. It's just dialogues basically. And he always gives like an introduction, or he touches on one topic, and then he writes like a funny dialogue that happened. So it's non-fiction. It really paints a very interesting picture of this Arabian culture. He tries to not pin it down to one specific place. he calls it Arabia. It's clearly Saudi Arabia, and he's been working in a military base as an English teacher for the young cadets. So they're like 18, 20 years old, and they, you know, they don't even want to be in the military for the most part, and they don't want to be in the English class either, and it's mandatory for them to be there, and they don't know anything because, yeah, like, that's what you learn in this book. Like, the people in Saudi Arabia, especially like the young people, they're so secluded. Like, the internet is so censored and all the media is so censored. They don't really know anything about, you know, about the Western world and the rest of the world. And he's not from the, you know, he's from South Africa. He's not from the Western world, as we call it, but he, yeah, it's a very interesting memoir. It's just like, you know, a slice of that culture, but it's very interesting. And also his tolerance to, like, I think almost everybody would go crazy teaching English to like young military students who are like at elementary school level English. And yeah, it was very funny and very informative, so I recommend it. Did I say that? I gave it 4 stars. And next I'll read Camenzind by Hermann Hesse. It's one of his early works, published in 1904. So yeah, one of his, I don't know, maybe the second or third one that he ever published, I think. And this edition is super old. It says here 9th of June 1972, so smells old. And this is coming in at, oh, well, actually it's 166 pages, so I said 150 or less, but I think I can, you know, I think I can make an exception for that. So yeah, I'll talk to you when I'm done with this. Hello. I'm a little bit sick today. That's why I'm wearing my sick outfit. How do you like it? I finished this book, and I could talk about it for a very long time, but I'll try to keep myself short. Well, one thing you should know about me is that I used to be a massive Hermann Hesse stan, like, really like a super fan. I tried to find out everything about him. I was very obsessed with him for some time, and I had recently fallen out of love with him a little bit, you know, as it happens. I discovered him like in my early 20s, and that's, in my opinion, that's the perfect time to discover him, because I can't really explain it. You have to experience for yourself, you know? Anyway, earlier this year I read Hermann Lauscher, which was his first published novella, and this was his second one, and I think he published some poetry in between that, but this is his second novella. And while I didn't love the first one at all, this one, oof, I really liked it. It was very beautiful. In the introduction it says, actually it doesn't even say who wrote that introduction, but it says that this book is key to really understanding him, and I could not agree more. This has a lot of motifs that are running throughout all of his body of work. Like, I could go on about this for ages. Well, all of his characters are very... His stuff is very autobiographical. He writes a lot of himself into his characters, and some of his like, there's multiple characters that even share his name or his initials, and this one doesn't. But yeah, like, you know, like his love for Italy and Switzerland is in there, and unattainable love is in there, and like that kind of like depressive, tragic life that he lived and that a lot of his characters live. This character reminded me of a younger version of the main character in Steppenwolf, which by the way is my favorite book of all time, like my number one book ever. And he was kind of like a younger version of that, I guess, because usually his characters are really like fine and either feminine is not really the right word, but this guy was very masculine, you know? He was a heavy drinker and a glutton, and he was very physically large and heavy, which is not very typical for him to write like that. And he's has a lot of experiences with death, like a lot of close people around him die, and that's also very typical for him, for Hermann Hesse, I mean. And yeah, just definitely very essential novella, and definitely key to really understanding him. Yes, so it made me fall in love with him all over again. Also, on the topic of falling in love with him, a very important topic is also like same-sex romance. That's like in every single one of his books that he ever wrote, I think. So that kind of starts here. And it also, which I really loved, it had disability representation, which I'm always up for. There's one character who is like physically disabled, like he's crippled and he can't move. And then at first the protagonist is appalled by him, and he doesn't really, know how to treat him. And then they become best friends, and he becomes his caretaker, but also this guy with a disability, he becomes like kind of his teacher also. It's a very nice relationship, and I really like that, that this was in this book. And like my thoughts about this reading challenge is that I noticed it was quite difficult for me to get into this, because if you read a lot of short books, then there's so many completely different scenarios which I'm starting to find quite hard to get into, which I expected to happen, but still. And I thought about what to read next, because I was like, if I read like Giovanni's Room, or if I read Garcia Marquez, that's also gonna be vastly different. And I thought about reading some Stefan Zweig, which I have here, but those, even though they look really thin, they're like close to 200 pages. And I decided to read something completely different, a German non-fiction book. This is written by a woman who has a disabled daughter, I think. Does she? I don't really know. Maybe that's bullshit what I said, but it's about living with disabled people. So I just picked this up randomly at a book station. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna read next. It's a nice short read, just under 100 pages, I think. Yeah, so that's my next pick. I'm still sick. To prove it. I finished this, Hören auf den Grund des Lebens. I should really read the blurbs, because I was completely wrong about what I said. It is fiction, actually. I mean, it's kind of, I guess it's like fictionalized non-fiction or something like that. It's 2 short stories by a woman who worked with disabled people for most of her life. And they're quite interesting. Let me say this. I liked the topic and the themes. I didn't like the writing style. The first story in particular felt like it should have been non-fiction, like it didn't really need the prose that the author tried to put in it. I feel like that didn't really suit it. Also, don't mind my fucking disgusting fingers. I did some artsy stuff earlier. But the first story touches, well, it's about a married couple, and the woman gives birth to a heavily disabled child who only lives to be 7 years old and needs constant caretaking, and it's about how that completely changes the lives of the parents, which is a very interesting, I don't know, like that's not really something you think about too often, eh? And also it's an anthroposophic book, which you can tell by this publisher, Freies Geistleben. So it's quite spiritual. It touches upon reincarnation and karma and the relation, like the karmic relationships. It's really, I mean, that's something that I've been into for a long time, like spirituality and anthroposophy, but definitely not for everybody. The second story, it's about a guy who also has an unnamed disability and he's nonverbal, but he lives in a small village community and everybody likes him and he's being very helpful. And then the second part is, well, from like medieval times or whatever, like also explaining like the karma and the resurrection, not the resurrection, the reincarnation. So, nice short read. I mean, I didn't hate it, I didn't love it, I think it was alright. I noticed, because I did set a reading goal for myself this year, you know. On my Goodreads I have 70 books that I would like to read, and this kind of feels like cheating. I know it's not, but it still feels like cheating because I'm reading so many books in such a short time. It somehow does not feel legitimate. That's just a weird effect I noticed of this self-imposed challenge. I haven't decided yet which book to read next. I guess you'll see in the next update which one I ended up reading, but I'll introduce you to some contenders. We have, as I meant, this one I mentioned before, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Gay romance, basically. We have Laubsturm by Garcia Marquez. I'm not sure what the English title of that one is. Then we have Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, which also features a disabled character, so that would tie in nicely, I guess. This book I randomly, like my roommate gave this to me. I don't really know what it's about, and I don't really think that's something that I would normally read, but who knows. We got another Hermann Hesse with a absolutely gorgeous cover, which I'm not sure when you wrote that. Oh shit, there's a newspaper article in there. That's pretty cool. I wonder what time that is from. Anyway, then we got this, The Cement Garden. I also don't really know anything about this. It's like about orphans. And then we got like two plays. I would like to read another play. So yeah, I guess I'll let you know which one I picked in the next update. I'm still sick, but I finished another book and I ended up picking The Cement Garden by Ian McEwan. And that book was really something. I liked it. It was very dark, very weird, very, you know. If you read it, then you know why I'm so torn about this, I guess. It's about abandoned kids, it's about orphans. 4 kids, and their parents both die shortly after each other, and they just kind of stay there in the house and they do something very bad and very controversial, which I don't really want to spoil. That ties them together and kind of gives them like a dark secret and stuff. And the oldest sister, she becomes kind of like a caretaker, and then the youngest brother, he's only 6 years old, and he goes through a lot of stuff. And I love stories that have really young children in them. It's as characters, It's not a lot of books do that, and it's very refreshing. And anyway, the narrator, who's like the second oldest, and he's a teenage boy, he doesn't really know his place, and he's, to be honest, one of the most unlikable characters I've read in a long time, but he's intentionally written as one. Like, he's just like this disgusting, greasy teenager, and he's violent, and he's predatory. He's kind of an abuser. Not kind of, he is an abuser. But still, they have like this bond of siblings, and they still tie together, and it has some incest in it, which, it's a lot of incest for such a short book. It's a weird book, but I really like the concept of it. I like the writing too. It was just really heavy and really dark. But yeah, I guess if you're into like dark, disturbing books, I would definitely recommend this. Like, I enjoyed reading this. But I do need to recover, which is why this is probably completely the wrong book. Like, I don't really know what this is about, but it's probably just gonna traumatize me more knowing how Garcia Marquez writes. But I'm gonna read this one next, I already decided, and then maybe, well, I don't really read a lot of lighthearted stuff, but I'll try to read something a little bit more lighthearted after that, maybe. Or maybe not, we will see. Finished. It's called Leaf Storm in English, which is a literal translation from German, and I guess probably also from Spanish then. This was, I didn't know this, but this is the first book that he ever wrote, and he wrote this when he was fucking 19 years old. Can you believe that? That is very impressive. And what is even more impressive is that it's all already there, like all the motifs, all of his, everything that is essential to his style is already there in this book. I should say that I didn't really like this book that much anyway. But if you're a Garcia Marquez fan, then you should read this, I guess, if you want to. It gives a lot of insight, like a lot of motifs that he touches on, he picks up later. For example, it's set in Macondo, and which is the village famously from 100 Degrees of Solitude and some other novels of his, if I remember correctly. And it has Aureliano Buendia, even though he doesn't do anything, he's just like this political figure that everybody looks up to. But yeah, and he wrote this like, I think 12 years before he wrote 100 Degrees of Solitude, so that's very interesting to know that this concept of this village, Macondo, and it lines up also chronologically, like the events that happen, they line up. But yeah, that this was in his head for more than 10 years, that's very interesting. And also the telling a story chronologically backwards from different viewpoints, that's in The Fall of the Patriarch. This is something he explores here also. And yeah, it's different characters. Well, it's a grandpa and a mother and a child. And they're sitting with this guy who just took his own life and he's dead, and they're waiting for I think they're waiting for the mayor to show up, and then they all just sit there and wait, which is also a motif, like just sitting and waiting and not being able to act. That's also, for example, that's in Love in the Times of Cholera. And the one with the letter, I don't remember the name of that one, but also something that he writes about a lot. And then they just sit there and they remember this guy, like they just think about what they experienced, and this guy, he's not nice, like he's an asshole. Everybody hated him, and everybody's glad that he's dead, except for the grandpa, like he was his only friend. And yeah, I mean, it's definitely a typical Garcia Marquez, but if you're not a hardcore fan, if you really, really loved 100 Years of Solitude, if you gave that book 5 stars, then this might be very interesting. But if you didn't, then I don't think you really need to read this. 3 stars, I guess. This one's next. Giovanni's Room. This edition is very, very beautiful. I've never seen this before. I guess it's like penguin love stories or something. I don't know if you can really see this, but the paper, the texture, it's absolutely gorgeous. I hope I don't damage this, which I'm very prone to doing. But I will take care to like keep this book in good condition. And that's it. Hello. It's already Friday. Didn't film anything yesterday because this took me a bit longer to finish. It's quite dense and it's quite small letters. Well, anyway, who would have thought that I would have 2 5-star novels in such a short amount of time? This book is amazing. I love it. It is... Oh, there was still a bookmark in it. Well, it's pretty famous. I guess you basically know the plot. It's about a gay romance in Paris. And, you know, James Baldwin himself, to me, is one of the most interesting characters in modern literature. Being a black gay man in the US in the 50s. Like, this completely changes everything that this took place in the 50s. And it was written in the 50s too. In 56? Yes. 1956. And, you know, this book is not very long, obviously, but the complexity that the characters and their relationships have, it is way more complex than with books like 3 times its size. It really is. It's kind of weird that the characters are fictional because they really feel like real people. It's I would like to read something to you here. He began to cry. I held him, and while I felt his anguish entering into me like acid in his sweat, and felt that my heart would burst for him, I also wondered with an unwilling, unbelieving contempt why I had ever thought him strong. This... What the fuck is that, dude? Like, how can you write such characters? It's really, really impressive how few words he needs to accomplish such complexity. I don't know if I like it as much as the Pigeon, but it's definitely a 5-star read for me. So yeah, that's amazing. 2 5-star books within less than a week. And my self-imposed challenge ends tomorrow. And I started, well, I already read the introduction of Mice and Man by John Steinbeck. Came with a little bookmark, that's always nice. And it's 100 pages, a little bit more. I doubt that I can finish it today. But if I finish it tomorrow, then so be it. I'll give you an update. I heard this is, like, a lot of people really love this book too, so I expect good things. I finished it. And I finished the challenge. Congratulations to me. On this book, well, I don't know, man. A lot of people really love this. I did not love this. I didn't hate it either. But, yeah, well, I like the Lenny character. Which, yeah, I mean, I guess he's based on a real person that exists. Or existed, I guess I should say. That John Steinbeck met when he was working on some barley farm somewhere. And yeah, I like how he was written. I like the other characters were just accepting of him, and kind of George, he was like a caretaker, and I like that character. I like both characters, and I like that it was written in dialect, very John Steinbeck like. Also that whole thing of dreaming and picturing like a better place. That's like an ongoing topic in every single book of his that I've ever read. But oof, the sexism in this one, it's quite strong. Like this female, I don't even know her name because she's just called Curly's wife. I don't even know if she has a name. But she doesn't do she's everybody insults her, everybody's terrible to her, and she's just trying to get away from her husband, and she's just looking for some company, and she's just looking for someone to talk to, and everybody treats her like she's this terrible person. I did really not like that one at all, but I gave it 3 stars because of the things that I did like. So yeah, that's my short review, and now let's wrap up the challenge. I read 9 books. Can you believe that? My goal was 10, but I realized quickly that I set that goal a bit high. I read 9 books, and I read a total of 1,109 pages, so I think that's way more than I usually read in a week. So yeah, wow, this really looks quite a lot if you hold it like this, eh? I'll also give like a quick rating and just tell you my favorite ones. I have sorted them in order now. I rate this one the lowest. Also, I don't think I mentioned this, but the introduction of this book completely gives away the whole plot. Like, it tells you the ending, which I don't know if that's considered common knowledge to know this story or not, but I did not like that. Well, next up is this, Leaf Storm. It never really caught me. Like, I didn't really want to know what happened next, Then this one, I think if I had another edition I would rate this higher, but it was just a bit complicated to read in the way that it was made up. Then this one, I don't think it was written like super well, but it was still a pretty interesting story, or 2 stories. Then this one I liked, it was not written, there was no prose, you know what I'm saying? I liked it, but it didn't blow me away. Then this one, I actually really liked it. It was really weird, but I like a good weird book, and it didn't change my life reading this, but it was pretty enjoyable. This one I very much enjoyed. I don't think it was the best that he ever wrote. I think that's why I only give it 4 stars, because I know what Hermann Hesse is capable of, and I have given some of his books 5 stars, and this was still a very, very nice one. And then these are kind of a tie. I absolutely loved both of these. I give them both 5 stars. They're very, very different, so I don't think I can rate one higher than the other one, but this, I already talked about this obviously, but I will think about both of these books for a very long time, and I will recommend them to other people constantly. So yeah, those were my favorite ones of this week. And yeah, that wraps it up, I guess. that's it. I don't know what to say. I don't really want to stop. Like I have enough books to keep doing this for a week, but I just want to get back into my regular reading routine for a bit, and then probably next month or maybe like in 2 weeks or whatever, then I think I want to do this again, because have a look. My pile is still fucking massive.